Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camera. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to review the Monaco Grand Prix. That's what we do. You know how we do it.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly what we do. But before doing any of that, of course, I have to introduce my co-host. He is a long suffering friend of mine who is unbearable heat down in Texas. So you know him.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, you got a little AC problem down there.
Little AC broke at the wrong time, my friend. Friday afternoon on a holiday weekend. Yeah. So, and the hottest day of the year was yesterday, I think, or something like that. But,
nice.
Yeah, sweet.
Mind you, being stuffed into one of those cars in your Nomex suit and your helmet, and little heat's nothing for you, man.
That's true. And I do have a pool just down the road, so spend a little time splashing around. So not all bad.
Yeah. Well, don't forget your water wings.
That's right. And my sunscreen.
And your
next
zinc
time
for your nose.
I learned my lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You
Lots of
burn
zinc.
easily.
Yes, just a wee bit. I'd never bronze, I'll tell you that much.
No, I don't either. I just burn.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Paul, we had a lot of racing over this weekend.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard to figure out what we should be watching. You had MotoGP, you had F1, you had the Indy 500.
I know.
The Coca-Cola 600, your personal favorite.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've I went over on Friday and watched Carb Day, which was
Luckily,
a
you
lot
got
of fun.
some driving. It looked like it was going to be a washout, but didn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't. They actually ran it. The kind of weather broke and the tracked right, and they got out and ran the full session. So it was a lot of fun watching that and seeing all the cars and all the wonderful views. I thought Indy looked great. Great to jump into our friend Mr. Patterson. Great to see him. And saw Zach there. I didn't hassle him because when he was walking, he looked like he was pissed.
Yeah.
And I thought he may have either seen Ricardo's practice session, or
he just reread the clause in Ricardo's contracts.
yeah.
What do you mean we can't get rid of him?
Right. There's a get out clause in there.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah, I know you were surprised that Zach wouldn't be at Monaco, but
I was.
I'm not surprised because when I first met Zach and worked with him as an instructor, and then when he started his big Just marketing company, worked for him there. It was all based in Indy, so Indy is a big place for him in his past. And I think it's a really important race for Zach, and so I think that's going to trump Monaco Grand Prix even for him. It's going to be a dream if he ever wins it. So
yeah, for sure. And he was there.
He was close. Yeah,
he was very close. Yeah, and it was. I think and I think that's a fair shout because I do think IndyCar is a very special place in Zach's heart. I think he loves that series. Always has. It's always been something close to him, and and hence you can tell when he was trying to get Alonso to go to Indy and doing those efforts, and now having the teams there. It was good to see him there. Good to see him supporting the race for sure, and a great win by my guy Marcus Ericsson. You don't F with the Swede, Paul.
Yes. What a helmet too, eh?
You had exactly. Now you're a huge Ronnie Peterson fan. Most longtime listeners will know that you're a huge. And he had a tribute helmet to Ronnie Peterson this week.
It was fantastic. Yeah. Very happy for that guy. Yeah, it was a good race. It was a shame, that the yellow came out at the end. But the right guy won. I think he was the strongest car on track. Besides Dixon, of course.
Dixon was.
But it was a personal mistake by him. So he can't blame anyone but himself, and it was obviously a very small mistake, but had massive consequences.
Yeah, it sure did.
Yeah, overall pretty good Indy 500. So
it was. Yeah, it was great to see the Swede up there, and former F1 guy. Unfortunately, Grosjean was out, and shockingly, I thought Grosjean would have blamed Ericsson for taking him out, but he didn't.
Yeah.
So,
just the wind.
Just the wind. That's what
Yep.
it was. So, and then if that wasn't grand enough in the Indy 500, which is a great race, and I really did enjoy, going over and looking at the garages and seeing the teams work, and it's always a lot of fun. Anyway, I was going to say that the Roger and the track looked great, and facilities look great, and there was a
Could be in better hands.
huge
That's for sure.
turnouts. Yeah, huge turnout. And then big shout out to Lee Diffie and the crew that called the race. Did a great job. So then,
As opposed to my F1 TV feed.
yeah. So this is all part of the Monaco Grand Prix contract debate, right? There's a lot of rumors that it very well could fall off the calendar. This was the last race in their current contract, and part of these things are like trackside advertising hoardings, and Monaco insists on doing their own TV production with their own production crew, and it shows. I think in the past it was a whatever. Maybe you didn't notice a whole lot of it, but to F1's credit, they've raised their game on the broadcast package, and we still give them shtick. But look, there's nothing easy about broadcasting and producing a Formula One race. Sometimes we give F1 some shtick, but boy, it did show up in the Monaco broadcast. It was not good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Focusing on the wrong race, I don't know, sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is a really exciting bit. Let's go over here.
Yeah.
Let's go up to the balconies. Yeah. There was also interesting. There was some talk about redesigning the track.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't really look back into the layout of the roads and what could and couldn't be done. Never even thought about it really. But there was some discussions there. That would be interesting if they, if there's something to do with re-upping the contract and maybe changing the configuration, making it a more raceable track, as in for passing perhaps. But I don't know.
I think that's part of the conversation. It's that Monaco pays less than half of what other races are pay for sanctioning fees.
Yeah.
The insistence on doing their own broadcast, the insistence on selling trackside hoardings or advertisings.
Yeah.
And then the other one was the track layout itself, and Formula One felt like they could do some modifications to improve the race, right?
Or they could just make the cars smaller. Just bring like three-quarter size Formula One cars to Monaco.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the cars are nearly outgrowing the track.
Yeah, that's the
But
problem.
they're outgrowing a lot of tracks. They're making a lot of tracks difficult. So, I mean, they just can't make these cars any bigger. I'm hoping when they come up with the new engine configurations that somehow they can make the cars a little smaller, a little lighter at this point, rather than just keep adding more weight and adding more, surface area,
I know. By the time they're done, it's going to be a NASCAR.
Yeah.
You got to be careful there. I like the idea of Monaco. They all show up with a 1968 circa modern version of the 1968 car, which would be good.
No
so
wings.
anyway, yeah. So, but when queried, Natalie from Sky asked Max, what are your absolute must remain on the calendar, irrespective of anything. It has to be there. And Max said, well, he really enjoys Monaco. It's the most challenging track, and he enjoys it. But he said, that Spa, and I'm right there with him.
Yeah.
Don't mess with Spa.
No, not any more than you already have. But it's an interesting track, as you say. Yes, it's not. You don't see a pass every lap or whatever, and any pass that does happen is monumental. But it's very cool to even hear the team principals talk about the drivers having to get more laps to get the pace, because you just don't attack this track. You don't go out one and just put down. You really have to build up that memory, that sequence of corners that flow through the corner to get even close to a fast lap time, and the drivers fighting this all weekend long. Every session they have to get their eye back in it and get that flow going in the track. It's very different discipline to a lot of tracks they go to where they can basically just go out there and attack. So there's a lot of more percentage of driver in here for overall lap time than maybe possibly anywhere else on the calendar, because it is such a challenge. And I love seeing that and hearing that and knowing that this is what these guys are doing, and when they do it in the race for 67 laps or something, it's just a phenomenal feat, really.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this in the past, and I'm not a driver like you are, but I kind of likened it to getting this rhythm. And you've talked at length about Monaco and that rhythm that you get. It's almost like muscle rhythm, It's a series of timings and moves and turns and turn-ins and braking. There's this complete rhythm and muscle memory that you get into, almost, some would call it, you get into this zone. I think Senna would say that. But that's really what it's about, isn't it? It's what you've got to get into, this rhythm, whether you're coming out of Rascasse and heading back through the turn to get down the main straight, or the Nouvelle Chicane, or my favorite corner. I don't know why, it always has been since I was a kid. I think it was, Monaco was the first race I can remember seeing when I was a little boy and watching Emerson Fittipaldi come down the hill and make that right-hander into Portier, and you could see the ocean out there. And Portier just has always been one of my favorite turns there. I don't know why. Most people like the hairpin, like the Lowe's or the station or whatever it's called.
I always like Rascasse. I mean, I like every corner. I mean,
I do too.
I love the swimming pool, the entry into the swimming pool, that fast. I mean, I don't see there being a bad corner in Monaco. I mean, I love the track, but
I do too.
Yeah, the one thing that gets used a lot is muscle memory, and memory. It's more like foreseeing rather than memory. Do you know what I'm saying? Because memory would be okay, boom, boom, boom. It's a reactionary thing, but it's really about foreseeing everything before you get there, and just being able to kind of harmonize with the track. So it's like a soothsayer kind of thing on the track, because in the end you have to be in such a zone. You're not literally thinking turning point, apex, exit, throttle, brake. It's literally just one, beautiful song, really.
Yeah, and that's probably why, when you're in that zone and you're coming around and you're looking ahead and there's so many blind corners, people say, well, I don't know why Sainz, ran into Perez in qualifying, because there's not supposed to be a car there, Portier. And he came around a blind corner. There shouldn't be a car crossing the track there. That's why he ran into it. It's easy
and he
to
said
do.
he saw the yellow late, and maybe the yellow came out just as he was coming in, but you can't just literally slow down right there in the corner. You're on the edge right there. There's no way of changing your direction that quickly, else you were basically driving way under the limit of the car. So.
Right. So anyway, well, let's talk about certainly a lot of discussion, Paul, about why the FIA didn't start the race on time, with several drivers saying, we should have started. I could have managed the rain, and then you could have red flagged it if it got too bad. But the FIA said that they were monitoring a very large rain cell that was about to hit, and for safety reasons, they delayed it. Now, with all the shtick they took over that, in fairness, Paul, when it did rain, it rained a lot. And in hindsight, I think that was probably not a bad call to delay that start. The problem was when they got started behind the safety car on the formation lap, and then they realized it was just really coming down in buckets. So they red flagged it and waited for that cell to pass, and then they were going to restart. Well, they couldn't restart because there was a power outage, and they were going to try to do a standing restart, but there was a power outage, and it delayed the whole thing for 45 minutes, them trying to figure out the power issue. And prevented us 2 standing starts, and that's what made it 2 rolling starts, because of the starting lights.
Right. So. Yeah. I mean, I guess they didn't want to start the race and have to stop it, because they knew they were going to have to stop the race. And obviously, there's a point right before they stop it where the road is going to get treacherous and could take out some cars, etc. So I think what they did, they delayed it so they get past the big cell. But but in the end, that meant that we had a race that was under its length. So what's worse, they ended up having a stopped race anyway. So what's worse, starting it later and trying to run it all the way through, or starting it, at least gets pushing the race in, stopping it, then restarting after the rain? I don't know, but I understand the theory, but to some degree I hate chasing weather expecting weather. I mean, maybe it's like 100% certain, but I know certain times we've been at racetracks where we've, oh, it's going to rain, it's going to do this, it's going to do that, and in the end, you know, they move the starts of the race or things change, and in the end, nothing actually happens. So you just got to kind of react to what actually is happening rather than what you think is going to happen.
What you think is, yeah, and I think that's what Martin Brundle's point was. He was a little nonplussed with the whole thing. You know, he said, you know, start it. Now's the window. It's fine. Start it. And if it starts to rain hard, then red flag it at the point. But let's get going.
There was 20 minutes or so where they kept delaying it, waiting for it to rain. You know,
yeah,
really.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
it's like it's drizzling. Okay, let's go. Inters go.
And yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, it's drizzling. Well, we race in drizzle. Let's go. You know.
Yeah.
But it was really that power outage which, you know, caused the delay. Which was unfortunate. So so then you kind of had the whole confusion of the race procedures and the power outages and the rain, and that led to this being, as Paul mentioned, a timed race that was 13 laps shy of the planned distance. So we were kind of robbed of 13 laps, which you know, could have made all the difference for Perez, right? 13 more laps of Carlos on hard compounds could have changed results.
Could have done. Yeah, and on that restart, I think I sent a message to you, you know, with the lapped cars, you know, especially at Monaco. It's like, I don't understand this procedure sometimes where everyone had to leave pit lane, and then you had to unlap the cars, and then you had to get the restart. Why not just put the lap cars right up there at the front of the grid, have them do their lap? Because I understand that, you know, they have to do the same amount of laps. I mean, sure, they could probably tinker around with the computer, but physically the cars have to complete the laps they physically need to complete to be classified. So just have them go around, join the back of the line, and then let's get out there and just start the race. It happens in a lot of series it just takes a lot of time, and
it does.
You know, no one likes to watch, you know, unlapping, relapping, pace car laps, lap after lap, just trying to wait for the series to figure out what the hell to do. So
I know. Mind-numbing. All right, let's talk about the race. We'll start at the top. We're going to start with Red Bull. Sergio Perez, P1, Max Verstappen in P3. In the end, Perez's crash in qualifying set the table to allow him to win the Monaco Grand Prix. Red Bull were running in order like everyone else was in the early stages due to the rain, but it was an early stop for Perez for inters on lap 16, perfectly timed when the undercut at that point was very powerful, and that gained serious track position against Leclerc. The undercut was powerful early on for the inters, but it then completely changed when it came to switch out to the slicks. And all of a sudden, when you're fitting the slicks, the overcut became very powerful, and Perez throwing down terrific in and out laps, Paul, for those slicks that saw him jump Charles for the lead, which he never gave up at that point. At the restart, Perez had soft compounds on to Ferrari's hards, and that left him a little vulnerable later on.
I think they were mediums, right?
Mediums, I'm sorry, yes. They were mediums. That left him a little vulnerable to graining later on, and he was hounded in the winning laps by Carlos Sainz, but held on for his first win in Monaco, the first Mexican to do so, the most successful Mexican in Formula One, which is awesome. Perez was on fire all weekend, really, and looked great. And honestly, that doesn't really surprise me, Paul. I became a Perez fan back in 2011 in his F1 debut. You and I talked about it, I think, at the time. Do you remember his debut in Sauber? And the reason he was on my radar is because he replaced Nick Heidfeld, right, at Sauber. So I was watching very closely. But I was blown away at Monaco. When they got to Monaco, what he did in Monaco in that Sauber was amazing.
He was like top 10, right?
But unfortunately, remember, he missed at Nouvelle. He hit the tire barriers, gave him a concussion. He was out for the next race. He crashed, but he was on fire there. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I think this track, I think he likes it. It suits him. And all those years ago in 2011 in his debut at Sauber, you could see it. And so I had every hope that he would finish. And he did very well. But that race strategy and we'll get into Max's in a minute, Paul, but that race strategy for Sergio was really on that knife edge of the undercut for the inters early was really powerful, but it was that switch to the slicks running longer and switching to slicks all of a sudden made the overcut the powerful.
Right, because I mean, basically, those outlaps on the slicks were a little treacherous, and
Right.
so you'd lose, time on the outlap rather than the inters. You went out there and you're already faster, by turn
Right.
3 than anyone was on the actual tire. So yeah, that's why the undercut overcut
Swapped.
swapped.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, they got it perfect for Perez, and he executed perfectly. It's, we know he's a tire whisperer, as they call it, right? He gets a lot of speed, and to use a little tire. Once again, you look at Monaco and what that track needs for someone to be good there, right? You need to keep a lot of speed, but you can't be using a lot of equipment, because that in Monaco it ends up you hitting the barrier. Other tracks it might mean you slide a little wide, you do a little this, but Perez is able to be very precise but quick at the same time. That's what enables him to same tires, and that's what enabled him to be good all weekend at Monaco.
Yeah, he looked great.
You like my pace? You like it?
Yes, Sergio, we do like your piece.
Nice.
It looked great. So everything worked out well for him, but that's not all. The Red Bulls jumped both their respective Ferraris. The same rules really applied to Verstappen. He had a brilliant end lap for inters that allowed him to leapfrog Leclerc. And then, had he not gotten stuck behind traffic, Paul, he may have been able to get Sainz too. He was oh so close. A fantastic example of why I love Monaco, because it isn't always on-track passing that makes a race interesting. The incredibly cool thing about this race was Hannah Schmitz on the Red Bull wall making brilliant strategy calls to see both her cars leapfrog both Ferraris, and she effectively put Ferrari on their back foot there and had them frantic trying to answer her strategy. And all weekend long, there was really two men that were on fire, and Leclerc was one of them, of course, with that incredible qualifying, and Perez was the other. Max just couldn't seem to get on balance with his car. There was just, P3. I think he may have gotten on the front row had that red flag had Perez not crash in quali. He may have got on the front row, but I don't know if they had a lot of answer for Leclerc, right?
Yeah.
And so with this win, Paul Perez is very much in the championship hunt. He's only 15 points back from Max.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting how Red Bull play this at this point, because, obviously when you look at the last race and Perez having to give up, potentially, I would think in the end it probably wasn't, but certainly, he had to give in to what the team wanted in favor of Max, whether it was going to happen or not in the future anyway. But by keeping himself super close, it's going to make it really hard for the team to keep selling him that, support role. And, one bad race for Max and Perez could leapfrog him.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, we if we end up seeing Max and Leclerc just, banging wheels and fighting each other, he can go under the radar and maybe sneak right up there as well, just because of that. So yeah, it's a good thing for Perez. It's a good way to back up what happened to him at the last race and his psyche there with the team. And as we said last time, it was like he's making it so difficult for Red Bull to even contemplate putting anyone else but him in the seat in the future. And certainly, the next guy would have been Gasly, who's just having a pretty rotten year anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think also, Paul, I think Christian said, hey, we don't really care which driver, wins the championship. They both have equal opportunity. And I'm thinking, well, okay, to a point. You're paying one of those guys like more than twice of the other one. So it is kind of important to you which one does it, and understandably. But see, this is the thing in the intrigue of Formula One, if you will. And I don't want to overplay this, but this is what we didn't see from Bottas. Okay? This is what we didn't see from Valtteri when he was there. He was a wingman. He was doing it. We'll see how Perez plays out the rest of the year. It's still a long ways to go. But if he's going to continue to be thereabouts on measure with Max as far as time, and on his tail and picking off points anytime Max isn't, that's a close run thing. It does remind me a little bit of Lewis and Nico, right?
A lot more like that. Yeah, obviously they seem to be getting along right now. But,
they do.
Yeah.
But that could change, it's going to be very interesting to see how Red Bull does this. I don't know that they'll get a Nico Lewis kind of rivalry, but I do think they're going to have to be very careful. You don't want to take the stuffing out of Sergio. But
Sergio's one to not confront his teammates.
No, he's
Remember
not.
The Ocon days, they were.
That's right.
They were very Hamilton Rosberg-esque in their inter-team battle as well.
At Force India, I remember that. So, this could be pretty intriguing. So watch Red Bull and see how they do this. Sergio could have some bad luck. Some, qualifying isn't always his strong suit. So we'll see how it plays out. It's just a little bit of an off weekend for Max, I think. Let's talk about the bigger elephant in the room. Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, P4, Carlos Sainz in P2. A case of really what should have been, Paul, for Ferrari. They underestimated the power of the undercut for inters by Perez, leaving Charles out 2 laps longer, and he got jumped as the inters were a lot faster than the full wets at this point. It's an absolute shame because it looked like a home win for Leclerc, who's never seen a checkered flag in Monaco in the 5 previous attempts. And if that wasn't bad enough, Charles got jumped by his teammate Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen, which makes it very difficult. And you texted me at the time, Paul. You were like, "Why are they not letting Charles go for the overcut?"
Mm-hmm.
And I mean
that was his only chance the second time. I don't know what they let him. Both times I left him in no man's land, and every time it shuffled him back a couple of spots. I mean, you don't get the chance to show up to Monaco and have a car that you have pace in hand over everybody else, and that's exactly what he had. I mean, he had it in qualifying, he had it in the race up until these strategy calls, and they just left him out. I mean, they just made every mistake they could possibly do. They had 4 choices, and they went for option 4, which was always the wrong one, right?
Yeah.
It was the bungled call when they stacked the cars was just heartbreaking, really. I mean, you knew at that point, you saw Sainz come in, and then Leclerc was right behind him. It's like, okay, they've resigned Leclerc to giving him a shot at getting up there,
Well, and it kind of happened because, and I think what prompted that stay out kind of radio call was because Carlos chose to stay out. He sort of said, no, I want to stay out until there's slicks, right? For 1 change, not 2. Now, as it turns out, to go from full wets to slicks, I think in context for his race, that was absolutely the right call.
It was a good call by him. He actually didn't have a bad strategy at all, because he called the strategy, and everything worked out famously for him, actually.
That's right. But unfortunately, Charles was set to box on the same lap that Sainz was. But due to Sainz's slow pace on his end lap, it allowed Leclerc to close up much too quickly. They had to stack the stops, and that cost Leclerc, 3rd place, and allowed Verstappen to get around him. I think they realized that he was there, and they kind of boxed. And then was like, no, stay out, and he was already in. But I think they were like, oh my gosh, we're out of time here. We're gonna have to stack him, and it was just almost a little bit of like a clown show there.
Yeah, but they really weren't out of time. That's the whole thing. I mean, Sainz was out of time because he was on full reins.
Yes.
I mean, his pace was seriously, going downside, and as I said, the actual strategy for him was perfect, and he called it from the pit, from the car, and
that's right.
Good for him. That really, for his position where he was, that was exactly what he probably had to do, right?
Yeah, if you're going to beat up Ferrari in strategy, you have every right to do it, but not on Carlos's race, because that was correct.
Right. But there was no urgency that was the lap that they had to pit Leclerc anyway, and I think even if Sainz's pit his in-lap had been faster, if there's one little issue that he has on his pit stop, where's Charles going to go? There was no good reason. I think it was still a better strategy to let Charles stay out for 2 more laps at that point, because of all the time you do lose on the slicks, and he could have made up gobs of time at that point, and possibly got back to the lead. But because they decided, this is the lap that everything has to happen, they pretty much destroyed his race.
Yeah, it's just mind-numbing. I just gutted for him, As much as I'm elated for Sergio, I'm just gutted for Charles, because I think, Charlie had this in hand. It's kind of like Scott Dixon at Indy, man. He could do whatever he wanted to do in that car.
Yeah,
and he had the car. I mean, fastest pole time ever. I mean, it just gutting. Except that was Scott's mistake. This was Ferrari's mistake.
Right.
So anyway, in fairness, both Ferraris got held up behind lap traffic. This didn't help their efforts, with Latifi really hampering Carlos as the Ferrari came out after its stop. It's a shame, because, as I said, had he not been impeded, he may have been able to go for the win. But as it was, both Ferraris got jumped by both Red Bulls in really a display of tactical intrigue fueled by the mother of all race challenges called changing conditions. These are just changing condition races are brilliant, I think of Canada a few years ago with Button and Vettel in the lead, right? And Button was so good at changing conditions, But it was a bad weekend for Ferrari. And in the end, though, Paul, Ferrari need to have a serious think about their strategy team, because to run with Red Bull and Mercedes, you cannot make strategy calls like this. It cannot happen. The sound, it sounded panicked over the radio when you realize your mistake. Charles has every right to be upset, and he's right after the race. He was being a diplomat as well as he could be. He wasn't completely, throwing the team under the bus. But he's absolutely right. This cannot happen. We cannot do this. We have the car. We have the pace. And you have the driver. We cannot do this. And he's right.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't that upset about what happened at the previous race, because he said, well, at least I know I've got a great car. But, you can't keep bungling it and not winning with the best car on the grid. And that's basically what Ferrari have done so far. So they've squandered a massive lead, and they seriously have to get together and figure it out onwards, because this season is long, but it's going to get very, very short if they keep bungling it like this, right?
Yeah,
and it's about a cool head in the pit lane. It's about communication between the two cars, the two teams. You just can't have that last second stay out kind of thing. You have to be methodical about it, and for a team of that height in motorsport, no excuses.
Yeah, I agree. Not at that level. They worked really hard to get a competitive car, and now they seem like they're surprised that they have a competitive car, and they're having to actually, crap, we're in the lead. I guess we ought to crack the laptop and do some simulation and figure out what our strategy is. So I'm sure, hopefully they'll get on top of it. And I say that as a Ferrari fan. And so, yes, it pains me to see something like that. But anyway, but it made Monaco fun. And it made it exciting, and it introduced Sergio into this two-way battle for the championship. Now it's a potential three-way. Let's talk about Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton down in P8, George Russell in P5. George jumped Lando in the pit stop, undercutting to take 5th place, continued to run a really strong race for the remainder, setting some great lap times in a challenging car. He continued his top 5 finish position in every race this season.
Crazy.
Now I understand, folks. I get it, and this just kind of miffs me. I understand that Lewis is a 7-time champ and demands a lot of attention, rightfully so. He's a 7-time champ, but it seems like Bottas got more adulation and commentary when he was at Mercedes than George does, and George is single-handedly holding this team up. The only reason they are where they are in the championship as it is because of George Russell, right? Yeah. I mean, I hope George feels appreciated inside the team, because on the outside, you'd hardly know he was the reason Mercedes is where they are in the championship. And he's had the measure of Lewis all season so far. And anyone would tell you, look, if anyone will tell you having the measure of Lewis, that ain't no easy task, folks. He's a 7-time champion, for Pete's sake.
Yeah,
So,
no one's really done it except in very crazy circumstances.
yeah. So, I mean, I get it. All props to Lewis. I understand. I get it, but I just don't understand the lack of comments. Reading Toto's comments, he said, yeah, George did a nice job, but it's a shame about Fernando because Lewis could have been, all the way up there racing Lando. And I'm thinking, well, George was racing Lando and he beat him. I mean, what is so hard about saying that, Toto? I mean, I get it, but, I don't know. I just don't understand. I don't understand
I think
why
it's their
we're
personal
so reticent.
relationship. So it's like
Maybe.
Obviously, as we went over a few times, him not showing up to the awards banquet was because of Hamilton and basically dissing the rest of the entire team because of it. So whatever his relationship is with Lewis is so strong that it's like that's the all important thing that he's striving for every race is to get Lewis back. But Russell's doing it silently, quietly, right? I mean, he's not. Unfortunately for him, he's not in a lot of battles because the Mercedes is kind of off of the top two teams, but ahead of everyone else, and they're not really racing anybody except themselves. Well, Russell is anyway. So it's difficult because he's really doing it under the radar. He's not he's not there fighting it out with this person or that person. He's basically just kind of the best of the rest, and everyone's there's neither in front or behind him. So he doesn't get a lot of TV time. He doesn't get a lot of press for it, but as you say, he's single-handedly keeping Mercedes in the hunt and out of the realm of the mid-pack teams.
For what it's worth, George, I think you're doing an amazing job, my friend. Walking into that team, there was a lot of questions about how you'd handle the pressure with Lewis being a 7-time champ and all that, and my friend, he's doing a great job. Yeah, he really is. Let's talk about Lewis. So Lewis had a tough race. I was watching him, Paul, during quali, and man, he had a handful
for sure. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! I mean, at every turn, Paul. I mean, I'm not quite sure how he managed to keep that car out of the wall. If I'm honest, I mean that is a testament to his brilliant talent because I was watching the qualifying and coming out of the swimming pool, they hit that curve and their car's just bouncing all over the place. I mean, it was how they kept it out of the wall. I don't know.
Yeah, it's super stiff, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's got to be tough too. And now Mercedes is chock-a-block full of brilliant people. I'm sure they do the correlations and they can figure it out. But from the outside, being a fan, it just seems to me it would be tough because they're running multiple configurations and different iterations on both cars. So there's not it's not a one-to-one comparison, right? So they're running something different on Lewis, trying to make gains, and running something different on George. And it seems, at some point you'd want to do that and you'd cover more ground to find the right solution. But then it's hard to correlate, and because the drivers are different. So it's oh my gosh, it was tough. But anyway, he tried to overtake Ocon at Saint-Devote, but the two collided there, causing some wing damage on Lewis's car. As the car cycled to pit stops, though, Lewis found himself behind Fernando Alonso, who was holding the entire midfield up, and this compromised any chance Lewis had really to rejoin George towards the front of the grid for more points. Toto wasn't happy about Fernando's pace. But Lewis, like Max, got caught out by the red flag in qualifying. This left him starting down the field, so he's always going to be a little bit on his back foot, trying to claw back, and that puts you amongst the midfield. And at Monaco, the midfield can be very tough to get around, and so it proved to be. So it's difficult to be harsh with Lewis. I think he drove a good race, and watching him in that car on Friday and Saturday. Whew,
yeah, the car's a handful. Obviously, not very compliant. The cars have to be stiff to make the floor work, but the car is just not compliant. I know people were squawking about the last race. Oh, they've solved McLaren's problems. It's not, But I was like, well, that's one track. Hold your horses there, everybody. Let's. it's a track that they knew very, very, very well, and didn't demand a lot of the issues that some other tracks will from the chassis. So
Right.
yeah, so it's a tough car to drive, obviously. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, if you switched the finishing positions and Lewis was doing what Russell did, and Russell was doing what Hamilton's doing right now, do you think they'd be saying, "Oh, we made the wrong choice"?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's hard to, and it's not real, but people question things very, very quickly when the car's not there and the positions aren't there, etc. But yeah, it's been a horrible season so far for Hamilton, and if they do split their engineering strategy, that is a strong way to do it and a better way to get there. But who's to know which is the best direction, and if they'll ever get to that point? It's a fundamental issue with the car that I don't know how they solve, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know either. I feel like they think they can, and it's not that I would put it past them. There's a lot of smart people there, but I do think it's very difficult. And because of that, I think Lewis, his championship hopes, he's kind of written that off for this year. But never say never. But and knowing Lewis, he'll fight all the way. If they do come on song, he'll be right there fighting, and so will George. But yeah, so far, it's been a difficult start for Lewis, difficult car for him to get on top of, less so maybe with George, but what are you going to do? They got to fix their issue.
Right.
Let's talk about McLaren. Lando Norris P6, Daniel Ricciardo P3. Here's a case of a young guy came into that team. You've got a veteran like Daniel Ricciardo, and everybody's, absolutely, crazy about Lando right now, and the job he's doing as compared to his teammate. But George doesn't get that. So Lando, still recovering from his illness, tonsillitis, mounted a great effort to run in fifth for most of the day, but he lost out to the Mercedes of George Russell there at the very end, right out of the pits, man. George came out, and they went side by side, and Monaco TV missed the whole thing. I mean, really, I was sitting there watching it. It's like, okay, people are in the pits. They're coming out. It's for position. What are we going to do?
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough!
Instead, we were watching Latifi, and we were watching for a while.
Yeah, watching something go on down in the midfield. Anyway, Lando had enough of a gap to box late, though, for fresh tires, and he came out and secured fast lap point, which was good. Great race for Lando. Up in P6. Zach's got to be happy with that at Monaco.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. Lando's consistently doing very well in that car. And they've had their difficulties, and it seems they've pushed through it better than Mercedes have, even though the McLaren still isn't as competitive compared to the Red Bulls and Ferraris right now. But Lando definitely sticking his head way above in the garage over his counterpart on the other side, which is horrible to see, really.
Yeah, it really is. It's like when I watch these broadcasts, it's like, oh, Lando and George, they're going to be really strong, potential champions one day. They keep saying that these guys are here, and I keep saying that these are the Formula One drivers. Stop acting like they're youngsters that are up and coming, because they're not. Lando is the real thing. George is the real thing. Charles is the real thing. So is Max. So is Carlos. These are your Formula One drivers. These are the guys. Now, Fernando, Vettel, Daniel, Lewis, these guys were the class before them, And so, like all Formula One, there is a changing of the guard eventually. And these guys are here,
Yeah, Ricciardo is not enjoying that changing of the guard.
No, he's not. He's not enjoying it at all. Poor Dan. Yeah, he switched to inters late, and then he was unable to make any progress in the field. But in the end, it does add to that growing course of concerns over his ultimate pace and longevity at McLaren. In the end, I feel like he struggled ever since 2019, and he had that one terrific win for McLaren, but. The recent comments from Zach Brown hinting at a get-out clause in the contract would suggest that his days could be numbered at McLaren. I mean no disrespect to Dan at all, because I think everyone knows you and I rate him very highly,
Yep.
and I think Dan's a great guy. But I'm just wondering if this point, if you're struggling with these current cars and you're not getting on top of it, I wonder if perhaps another series would suit him more at this point. If he would find more enjoyment in racing in IMSA, IndyCar, Le Mans, or something like that. I don't know.
NASCAR, I think, is what Dan
I think
loves.
NASCAR, Dan would be totally
He's
up for
a
that.
big Earnhardt fan, so
Yeah, he is.
he'll follow Kimmy over there. I would say that's more likely than anything. Although
Yeah.
he would be phenomenal in a sports car as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing with McLaren is they've got so many drivers in waiting. I
Yeah.
mean, Zach's built up quite a quite
He's
a
got an
group of
arsenal.
drivers. He's
I
got
know.
the guys in the IndyCar, including Herder, right?
Yes.
And so he's got like at least 3 guys who are under the McLaren on a McLaren contract that could easily be inserted in there. And so I think that's with Ricciardo not coming around, that you can only be so patient, right?
Yeah.
That before it seemed, well, you got Ricciardo and Norris, that there's no seat available at McLaren, but because of Ricciardo's woes, now it's looking more and more likely, well, Zach be like, well, what do I have to lose?
Yeah.
Ricciardo's not bringing points home. I can put one of my other guys in there, whoever you would choose to be
Yeah.
them. And it's hard to say how good all those guys would be compared to Ricciardo, but there's not a lot of harm in it at this point because Ricciardo is not bringing anything to the table.
He's not scoring points, so if O'Ward didn't or Herder didn't, well, whatever, maybe they could mold him into the driver that they want. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alpine. Yeah, right. Alpine, Fernando Alonso P7, Esteban Ocon P12. Alonso took a lot of heat for running 3 seconds a lap slower than he could have during the race, and this created a real bottleneck, holding up Hamilton and a gaggle of cars in the midfield. And I get it. And Toto was, sort of mad about that and commenting about how that's ridiculous, and race control needs to look at that. But in the end, Alonso drove his race.
Mm-hmm.
That's his race to run. He can run it however fast he wants to run it. But in the end, he was managing his tires so he would have rubber left in the end to consolidate his P7 position.
Yeah.
And he has every right to do that. He knows Monaco is hard to pass at. He's a wily veteran. He gets it. And so he drove as slow as he as slow as he wanted to, safely, without letting Hamilton pass him, because he was trying to beat Hamilton. So,
And he did.
yeah, and he did. And the reason he was pacing himself early on in that stint was because Friday showed a lot of graining and adverse tire wear. So he said he had to be careful with them to make it to the points and make them last. And then notice, as it got closer in the waning laps, then he did pick up the pace and actually gapped himself to Lewis.
Right.
So, I don't know, Paul. I don't know why you get mad at that. It's his race. If, you don't like it passed and you say, well, there's no passing at Monaco. Well,
Then do a different strategy, get yourself ahead, something.
Right.
I mean, I understand the frustration, but there's certainly nothing in the rule book or school of etiquette that says Alonso needs to drive faster to help Lewis's race. He's trying to beat Lewis. He's trying to beat everyone else behind him. He saw that he wasn't really going to be in contention with the top 6, so 7th was the best he did. So he was running his own individual Grand Prix to maximize points, and it came out fruitful. I mean, the old adage is drive as slow as you can to win, and the win point for him was P7, so he drove as slow as he could to give himself as big a margin of choices for his tires on when to stop, and giving him options basically, and ran a perfect race. And it was detriment of Hamilton and possibly his teammate as well, but that's not what Alonso's there to do.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Ocon got a 5-second penalty for that clash with Lewis, which dropped him out of the points. At one point, he was also petitioning his own team to tell Alonso to speed it up because he couldn't get a gap, So he was back there in the clutches, and he was like, tell Alonso to go, and it just didn't happen. How did you see the incident with him and Lewis?
Hard to say it was a penalty-worthy clash, but I think they're just fighting for the spot. I think at other tracks, that instant probably wouldn't have made a penalty, because it was Monaco, it did.
Yeah, I kind of feel. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think maybe since it's Monaco, there's maybe
Yeah.
they garnered a penalty, but I haven't went back and looked at it. I don't recall if Lewis was fully alongside him on the inside or if he was ahead of him on the inside or
I
not.
mean, it was a wheel-to-wheel clash, right?
Yeah.
So,
But it was Ocon's rear wheel to Lewis's front wing.
yeah.
So, but Lewis was there, on the apex. So,
And it wasn't a big hit, else one of them would have been
yeah.
out. So
Right.
we're dealing with a very narrow track and very fine margins, and they both scraped through it. I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
I wasn't outraged. Let's put it that way.
No, I wouldn't either. Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas and Bottas in P9, Zhou Guanyu P16. This was always going to be a rough race for a rookie, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And his scary braking event coming out of the tunnel with Sonoda.
That was crazy. Oh,
yeah,
we didn't
crazy.
even touch on Sainz's big save of the day, right?
Oh, right. Sainz had that
Holy moly.
big tank slapper.
Yeah, both of these events look like they could have just been parts strewn all over the track. More so even than what happened to Schumacher later. It was like, which I'm not even sure what happened there, but these little errors, they should be kissing the ground when they got out of those cars at the end of Grand Prix, honestly, because it shouldn't have happened.
No, and Joe even rated the team and said, "Whoa, I had to try. I need a new pair of pants."
Yeah. I like that guy.
I do
like
too.
that guy, and he is actually a pretty darn good driver, and obviously
He
has
is.
a good car control there too.
Yeah, well, and look, it's going to be tough. He's rookie. It's Monaco. It's raining. It's changing conditions. Finished P16. I have a lot of patience with that. I think those are tough conditions to be in. He had nice car control, saving that car. Unable to make any ground in difficult conditions. He said he said really for him it's kind of just surviving the race is kind of how he was approaching, and I think that's right. I think that's the right approach. So there again, he wasn't in the points. He wasn't on Bottas's tail, but I was impressed with Joe, and I think he's doing a good job.
And I like the theory. Hey, I had to give it a go. Yes, you did.
Yeah,
Good
you
for
did.
Because a lot of people didn't, and it nearly all worked out for you. But in the end, you finished the race. So good on you.
And who knew the Chinese guy wanted to pass the Japanese guy? But there's a little tension there. So anyway, that was good. A good race for Joe. Bottas settled in like the veteran he is. He's been here before. He managed his strategy and his tires well to bring it home in the points. But there's a part of me that felt maybe Valtteri would have done better than ninth, if I'm honest, given his pace on Friday and in qualifying.
Yeah, and his current turn of form for sure.
Yeah, and his current turn of form. I think, I get it's tough conditions, so perhaps ninth is the best the team could get in regards to just overall team performance. Maybe that's about what that could do in those situations. But yeah, I don't know. I was kind of expecting him to be a little higher.
Yeah, it's difficult because of the lack of passing ability. Even if he does have the potential in the car, if the qualifying isn't quite the start doesn't go right, you're kind of nearly stuck, right?
Yeah.
In other tracks, you can make differences and make moves and move up. So sometimes, even though, you're a P7 car or a P6 car, you're kind of stuck where you are. So you can't falter too much. Survival is a big game in Monaco, and it's a bit of a roll of the dice where you end up, apart from if you're at the sharp end there. So I think it's all good. The good thing for them is more points on the board.
More points. So, yeah, absolutely. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll, what was he? P15?
154, you said.
P14? Yeah.
On the note says P150. Well done, Lance.
Well done, Lance. P154. That's awesome.
Maybe he entered the Nürburgring 24 hour, I think.
Yeah, he may
accidentally.
Have. Yeah, he may have. Yeah, I think that's maybe what it was. I'm going to get you the real number. He was P14. Sorry, folks. I had a typo in my notes. P14 for Lance.
I want it now. What's the matter with those twats down there?
Sebastian Vettel, P10. It's points, but just points for Vettel, as he said. Seb said, I understand how everything looked kind of crazy and chaotic around him, but he says, actually, the race is pretty much a straightforward and clean race for him. Not a lot going on, and he ran to 10th. He inherited that place by Ocon's penalty, so he was really in 11th, and scored a single point.
There you go.
There you go. Lance looked like a rookie out there, and that's a little surprising to me. I want to be fair to Lance. Lance is typically pretty damn good in the rain.
He is, yeah.
And it surprised me a little bit to see the two Canadians ping-ponging off each other and running into the wall behind the safety car. So that surprised me. He boxed like Latifi did for inters, and the two of them nearly hit each other trying to get out of the pits. I don't know, what is it with the Canadians so aggressive?
I don't know.
Yeah.
They're so pleasant, but when you
I know.
helmet on and start the engine, they get crazy.
Altogether, a tough and clumsy day for Lance, but he did have a nice pass on Yuki at Roscoe. So,
yep, hard to do.
Yep, hard to do.
Yeah, you're right. Changeable conditions are actually Lance's strong point, but
they are. Yeah,
Monaco is a different beast, even in changeable conditions. So, yeah, ultimately they're just struggling with the car, and they can't. There's not a lot they can do with it, and this is probably just like the Mercedes. This track is not going to highlight. Is going to highlight some of their negatives rather than their positives. So.
Yeah, agreed. AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, P11, Yuki Tsunoda, P17. Gasly was one of the first to change the inters, along with Latifi and Stroll. And on the initial laps, it was certainly a handful, but it soon started to pay off in dividends as he moved forward and was setting the fastest pace on track. It's a shame about qualifying, Paul, because I think had he... he had the pace to move from 17th to 11th. I suspect he may have been into the points had he not had that tough quali session. So unfortunately for Pierre, I think he was happy with the result. Felt like they recovered from bad qualifying, and it was pretty good. I wouldn't say it was a bad race just because he wasn't in the points, but I do think it's a shame because he got caught out in quali, which sucked. And so unfortunately, there you are. He ends up P11.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at the back at the start of the race, you do throw the dice, and him going in for inters and did a great job and then closed right back on the whole pack that he just left behind, but he was on inters, had a lot more pace. I actually thought he was going to be well into the points.
Yeah.
He was the one that, one of the first ones to click, and I think it was of a benefit to him, which it showed in where he finished, but I actually thought he was going to end up a little bit further down there, but he couldn't make quick work of, was it Zhou he was trying to get by for the longest time? Who was on the reins, but he did have a hard time. He needed to try and use that advantage of the inters.
Oh, it was Magnussen, I think, that held him off.
Yeah, to get rid of some people as well and keep pushing forward, but you had to literally wait till they pitted for inters and then make the progress, and that stunted his progression into the points, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking, I was looking at notes. I think it was Magnussen that he got stuck behind. Yes, and then Yuki got undercut by a few cars, and then he ran off on Save to Vote a couple times for good measure. Pretty much a ragged day for Yuki.
Yeah, it's a donut day for Yuki.
Yeah, it was. Haas F1, two DNFs, dual DNF, first one of the year for them. Kevin retired with a water leak cooling issue. It's a shame because he said he was running well enough to hold off Gasly and Bottas, and he was expecting a pretty good race, and unfortunately they retired him. Schumacher had a wicked crash at the swimming pool section, but thankfully he's okay. So it's their first dual DNF of the season. Third race, though, Paul, in which they've not scored any points. So they need to take a step back and regroup here. Hopefully the upgrades they're bringing for the French Grand Prix will work, but pretty tough weekend for them.
It was a really unusual crash too.
Yeah.
I get it that Mick's like, I don't know what happened, because it was an unusual phase of the corner for the car just to change direction like that. It looked like just something broke. And I don't know if they can analyze it and find out, but it didn't look like a driver mistake. He had plenty of room going out to the left. The car wasn't, didn't look like it was an attitude where it was just about to break free. and it did. So it really
Yeah.
looked like the car pivoted very, very quickly for no good reason. And it
He was
a
already
big,
through the apex, right, Paul?
he was
already
yeah,
through that.
it was coming off the apex, and
Coming
I
off,
said
yeah.
it didn't. Yeah, it was.
It
was
wasn't
a
like he
strange
was
point.
all,
right.
with a bunch of lock in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was very strange, but the
Oh.
obviously spectacular crash destroyed the car. With the
Another $1
budget
million.
cap, it's going to make it really difficult for
Yeah.
Haas. I think Mick's actually doing a pretty good job this year, but he has had a couple of big
Yeah, he
ones.
has.
But
Yeah.
hopefully it's not a derogatory to his place on the team, but it is derogatory to Haas's budget. They've been holding
Yes.
back on doing upgrades, and they'll run out of money to actually buy an upgrade in the end.
Yeah, right. By building new cars.
Yeah.
Then finally, Williams, Alex Albon, a DNF, Nicholas Latifi in P15. Latifi hit the wall at the hairpin behind the safety car before the start and had to stop for a new wing, and then he stopped right after that for inters. But with those tires, he managed to climb back to 15th, despite many questions up and down the paddock about his F1 future.
Yeah.
And at this point, it wouldn't surprise me to see some sort of mid-season change.
It would surprise me just because of the funding he brings, but
that may
things
be the one
change,
thing.
right?
Yeah, that if he stays to the end of the season, that may be the reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Albon picked up a puncture after running straight at turn 1 and then retired the car. I think Alex said that he started experiencing bouncing on the straights, and the team hadn't had that issue. And so there's some concern they retired the car. So that's the end. So for Williams. Okay, let's hand out some awards. The first award is always Move the Race.
Get it there, Lewis.
All right, Move the Race.
Yes. Oh, I think we discussed it before the podcast, and we're in full agreement for all our awards here. So
Yeah.
I think we'll just announce the voting.
Yes.
All right.
The voting's in.
Move of the race is Sergio Perez.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can you not fault him? Lando did have a great run, as did George, but sometimes you got to give it to the winner, and Perez was under a lot of pressure, and it was nip and tuck for the whole race between his teammate and the other Ferraris, and he was the one that came out on top. So
yeah, it was indeed.
I like your pace, Sergio.
Yes, we do like your pace. I had Sergio and Red Bull strategy. I think it was great. No doubt. All right, next award is Donkey of the Race.
We'll do it live.
All right, Paul. Donkey of the Race. We, again, are of like mind.
Yeah, we got to give it to the Leclerc side of the garage there,
Yeah.
Ferrari.
Yeah.
Couldn't have done it much worse.
No.
Honestly.
No, you really couldn't have. That was just, wasn't good at all. So, that was, we're of similar mind. You and I.
Yes.
All right, final award is Drive of the Race.
Get down. Get down.
All right, Paul. Drive of the Race. Again, we have like mind.
Yep. Sergio. Got to be Sergio. His team won a move of the race, and Sergio won drive of the races.
Absolutely.
You like my pace? You like it?
Yes. Yes, I do like it. Yep. Perez is my drive of the race as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it. All right, Paul, we're going to jump into some mailbag.
You've got mail.
We've got some mail. Got mail from Garrett in Belgium, no less. So, Garrett, if you're out in West...
Belgian name.
It is, yes. And if you're out in West Flanders, tell my friends in Kortrijk I said hello. So there you go. It says, hi, Todd, Paul, and Grace. I enjoy listening to your podcast. I have a question regarding driver performances. We're well into the season. It seems that some drivers are still struggling comparing to their teammates, Sainz, Ricciardo, and Gasly, among others. Thus, the new car concept, ground effects cars suit their driving style less, or should they be able to negate that? Vettel seems to flourish, on the other hand. What are your thoughts?
I don't know if Vettel's flourishing, but...
Yeah, well, he's doing, better than Lance.
Yeah, right. But we did see Vettel struggle when they changed the rules for his
Yeah, we
Red Bull,
did.
if you remember too.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
No driver is invulnerable. Is that the right word?
Invulnerable, yeah.
To rule changes and maybe slow to adapt to a different style, or difficulty to adapt to a different style that the car demands to get the pace out of it. And so is that what these other teams other drivers like Ricciardo are struggling with? Probably.
Yeah.
Are the younger drivers easier to adapt? Probably. In the end, I mean, Ricciardo's, I would say, back in the day, he was easily adaptable, but as you go along, stuff becomes ingrained in your driving athletic ability that is a lot harder to get rid of. Change is tough the older you get in life. I guess,
sure is.
I suppose, right? And some may never get back to that point. We even saw back in the days when the tires were a massive issue for people like Button.
Right.
Very skilled driver, but the tire demanded a different style that Lewis could bring to it and Button couldn't. So, but then you saw Button getting, when things changed a little bit, he was back on the pace. So you can't,
that's right.
It's not like they lost their talent, but everyone's got a style, and it's that's what got him there. And you can't just completely 180 degree what got you there. And unfortunately, sometimes that is not going to actually give you good results at a certain point, a certain time, a certain package that the team or the car or the rules are giving you.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good question. It's always tough. It's always tough when they do make big rule changes and getting on top of those things. But it's I've even seen it in past, and the reason I'm just sitting here thinking, sorry for the mental pause, but I'm just thinking back through the history of watching the sport. It's always been kind of interesting when not just a regulation change that prompts sometimes this disparity. I've seen it with teams that had a number one, number two driver where the car is really pretty much designed around their number one driver and the way and their driving style and what they like. They like a real pointy car, and the other driver may like a little bit of understeer, and he's never going to get it, and so you can see that as well. But you can see adapting styles. There's no doubt in my mind that, and this would go back through history, Paul, Prost would have had to adapt. Senna, a master of adapting. Schumacher would have had to adapt to changeable cars and the way that the cars perform and all of those sort of things. Lewis would have to adapt. And I think that's what Lewis is struggling right now. He's going through that adaptation.
Right. I mean, he might be looking for something that he had for the past 8 years.
8 years. Right.
And he may be at the point where he's trying to get the car to conform to what he's evolved to as a driver, rather than him having to evolve to what the car is demanding. And remember, it's a team sport also. And, both sides of the garage have a lot of personalities, a lot of skill levels in their engineering, mechanical, strategy. Sometimes that can be the difference between a couple of spots on the grid as well, not just the driver behind the wheel, but also the team that's behind them.
That's right.
And me, obviously being involved with a series that has multiple drivers in one car, we get to see that more than you do in a series where it's one driver, one car. And even though the cars are painted the same and they're the same design, you can always say, well, it's got to be something. Is there something wrong with the car? I want his chassis, right? We've seen those demands, or there's something just not quite right. And so they can blame it because there's no one else to back up anything positive or negative about what the car is doing. When in the heart of racing, for instance, our 23 car, we've got Ross Gunn, Alex Rivera's, those guys don't drive the same. They ultimately come to the same lap time, but their styles are actually quite different. And to come to a conclusion to get them all to work together where it could work for both and get the maximum lap time is not always easy.
Yeah.
And so that's all part and play here, but on a very individual basis on the driver team side.
And it could be, Paul, when you think of, I mean, I do think there could be some merit to the commentary that around George Russell having come from Williams and having to struggle with those cars so bad as to why he's been able to adapt to this Mercedes better than Lewis. And I have to think, and I'm probably pretty close on this one, that this ill-performing Mercedes is still better than any of the best performing Williams that George ever drove, right? Yeah. And so for George, this is still as bad as it is. You know, Lewis is like, oh my gosh, for 8 years I had a car that was like butter. And now this thing is a handful and I'm having to change my driving style and this sucks and I hate it. But George is probably saying, okay, yeah, it's the bouncing sucks, but everything else is pretty good, you know?
There's a lot more people in my mirrors these days.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think there's probably something to that. But
absolutely.
Great question, Gert.
It was.
Steve asks, hi there, longtime listener from the UK. I just wondered if you guys get to see the free practice sessions stateside. Sometimes they're very informative, especially Martin's Trackside View, commentary, and FP2. Excellent podcast, by the way, and delivered completely neutrally. Well, thank you, Steve, because I get accused.
I thought he said naturally for a second. I'm saying,
well,
yeah, script I've been reading the whole time. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right. Every word, every utterance is off of a script.
It's script.
I gotta
puppet. I'm just a puppet. Yeah.
Hey,
good point,
Paul,
Todd. You're right again, Todd.
How was the race, Paul? No, neutrally. You know, Steve, is so funny because I get so much hate mail from Lewis fans saying I am racist. I hate Lewis. I'm a hater. I'm a
your color in shirts isn't good.
Yeah, right. I'm hideous. They ascribe all kinds of things, you know, as if they know me and they don't. But on the flip side, I get emails saying you're such a Lewis lover. You know, it's all about Lewis. You know, I get both sides. You know, and it's
I got some of that this year, which is exciting.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You got some of that
last year, whatever it was. Yeah.
Right, but it's weird because I guess to your point, I just call it as I see it. When Lewis does well, I'm the first person to raise my hand and say, that's awesome. Because Lewis is freaking awesome. There's no doubt about it. He's an awesome driver. But when he's being a chump, I'm the first person to say, that's just BS, you know? And so, you know, I call it. You just heard the race review here. You know, I called Ferrari out. That's my team. Ferrari's my team. I love Ferrari. You know, I'm Tifosi. But they really cocked it up. It looked like a clown show. It was a joke. You know, Charles should have won that race handedly. And he didn't. So I'm going to call it out. You know, so I appreciate you, at least, Steve, if you're the only listener out there that recognizes that Paul and I try to be neutral about it. I appreciate that. And yes,
I think there's a lot of people. I think the majority of people get it and understand. So
yeah, I hope so. I hope people do, because we do try to run.
Right.
You know,
we do try.
And Paul has his favorites. I have my favorites and all that stuff. But that really shouldn't enter into it, because everyone has their favorites. So for us to get in here and start, you know, teeing off on, you know, Nicholas Latifi, I think Nicholas is probably a great guy. He can drive a hell of a lot better than I can. And you know, just he may not be ready for prime time. I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm not castigating. I'm not taking the piss here. It is what it is. Yes, we do get free practice. I watch all of it, Steve, and I love it. And as a matter of fact, Steve, I was really upset when they shortened it. I really liked that 3 hours because there was a lot of commentary you'd get, not only from Martin, but truth be known, I really like Ant Davidson and PDR. And
I actually like those guys better than Martin nowadays. I think Martin's taken the presenter side of things a bit more than certainly Ant Davison. I mean, everything he says, I'm listening. Because he's just out there. Martin's a bit, I know he hates doing the pick walks, but that's kind of his thing now. He's color nearly than he is, a former driver just commenting on driver things. Right. And so, he's sitting there on the corner going, look how fast they are. It's like, okay.
Yeah, they are fast.
Yeah, real fast, Martin. But I want to know why it's fast or what's struggling. Right. Why is he struggling?
I will say his track walk at Monaco was good with coming out of the swimming pool, and he pointed it out, and it was really good because when you watch him come through there and how unsettled the Mercedes were as they were going away from the camera down into Rascasse, you could see that car bouncing than the others. And so that was a good one. Other ones, you're right. It's kind of like, they're really fast through here. Yes, they are. That's what F1 cars do. That's why we love them, Martin.
Yeah, and he's a very astute guy. He's awesome. He's got massive credentials, and I saw him drive many, many times, and nothing but admiration for his driving technique and his skill. It's just,
he's awesome.
When you've been out of the cockpit for so long and been in behind the microphone for so long, you kind of you just kind of morph into something a little bit different.
I got a lot of time for Martin. I like him, but I do think Ant and PDR add a lot. Anthony is the Mercedes sim guy. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he knows.
He's knee deep in it still. I mean, he just retired from driving this year.
Right.
And he's definitely well deep into Formula One and what's going on. And PDR is still driving. And
that's right. So their commentary is spot on. And it's always difficult when you get those two, because they're so steeped in motorsport as drivers and they understand it at a pretty granular level. It's always difficult when they team them up with a person that it doesn't know, and so they kind of have to feel their way around a topic, right? So it isn't always easy. But
no. And
but anyway, Steve, it's great.
And it is. And I put myself, and I watch the F1 TV side for the most part, just for giggles with the two of us or whatever, to comment on it, because some people have to watch that side, and I know you can switch to the Sky feed, and the one guy, what's his name, the engineer guy, that's just irritates me to death because he is talking like he's Captain Kirk, and we talked about this before, but this week they had Ben Edwards, who's a pretty good commentator, and Alan Manish was on there. So I'm like, okay.
Oh, Alan's awesome.
I mean, I've known Alan for a long time, and I've had many conversations with him. And I never missed an opportunity to get a lot of info out of Alan Manish because he's got a ton of it in there. So I was like, okay, I'm not even going to try and switch because anything Alan says here, I'm ready to listen. So it was very cool to see Alan there. Obviously, he's local, so it made it easy for him to appear on it. So that I saw the F1 TV, and it's not. I think Ben Edwards does a pretty good job, and certainly Alan Manish did as well. But some of the others leave a bit irritating.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's they're checking a youth box or it's like the Naomi guy. I have literally no idea why she's on. Because it adds nothing. She seems aloof and at arm's length, and it just it has sort of the same personality as Danica Patrick for some reason. Danica comes across
personality. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Danica. It just doesn't. I don't know. It's just something that doesn't seem
relevant.
warm and fuzzy.
Yeah,
and the comments have to be relevant, and they're not.
You've got to be informative. You can't just be commentating on something that someone sitting on seat B and row A can say the same thing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and that's just it. I think Rachel does, Natalie does, and her questioning. I think she does a great job, so it's nothing untoward. It's just, some people do it well and some don't,
Yep.
So anyway, good point, Steve. Finally, John Bowles asks, hi, Paul, Grace, Todd. I've been listening to your podcast since the early Formula1blog.com days. Wow, some 14 or 15 years. Oh, I'm so sorry, John. You've been listening to us for that long. Pre-Paul as co-host, I think. I didn't even know time existed before Paul. Wow, that's
so that
old
was 2009. School. That is a long time.
Yes. That is. long time ago. You may have heard the podcast from a cave. Wow.
I still haven't heard that.
No. As a 10-year wedding anniversary gift to ourselves, my wife and I finally will be going to our first F1 race in Montreal in a few weeks with our two boys, 4 years old and 8-year-old Max Verstappen fans. Well, they picked a good driver to be fans of. What are your suggestions for the best things to check out with the family for the race? Are there specific turns to check out or support races that would be fun? Thanks, and keep up the great work, John. Well, John, thank you very much for listening for so long. I'm impressed you've put up with that much punishment. So, Paul, I have not been to the Canadian Grand Prix, and everyone is stunned that I haven't.
I'm
But
stunned.
you have.
Several times.
Yeah, several times. So help John out. What is a good place to view the race from, and what things to check out?
Yeah. So the best place I ever found to view from was the 1-2-3 complex. Seems pretty apparent. Obviously, you're seeing the start line. You're seeing the cars come into the first turn all together, but you see a lot of different driving styles there. Remember when we talked about the end of the S's at in Austin? I'm saying,
Yes.
stand here and just see who's taking a different line, listen to throttle, listen to the brakes, see who's carrying the speed in, etc. You can see a lot of that in the 1-2-3 complex and how the cars put the power down going up the hill into 4. So you can, not just to be in close proximity to the start of the race, but you can see a lot of differences in the cars, the drivers, the speeds, and there's a lot of things happen there. It really does. So it's a great place to watch from. You can watch all the way from the hairpin. Usually there's something to see. It's just not super spectacular on the speed, because obviously you just see them come in a straight line, they make a turn, then they disappear. So definitely the 1-2-3-4 complex perhaps would be the ideal spot to watch from if you can get a ticket there, so to speak. But I highly encourage you on all the practice days to just do a lap. I know he's got little kids, and that makes it difficult to get around. It's going to be hot. Bring a lot of water, get a lot of shade for the kids. Even though the Max Verstappen fans are going to be kind of grouchy eventually. Sport races there. I know Ferrari challenges there. That's always fun to see really rich guys crash really expensive cars. Good fun to watch that. But there's also a Formula car race that's been there ever since I think the beginning of the Grand Prix. Being in Montreal, where they have Formula Fords, and they get like 60 cars, no wings, Formula cars, 4-speed, 5-speed transmissions, and it's just a melee, and it's a lot of fun to see that. And this, not many people get to see Formula Ford races if you're, unless you're a real anorak and you go to your local races. But it's one that even older guys come out of the woodwork to jump in their old Formula Ford to go racing, because you're racing on a Grand Prix weekend, and it's a hell of a race, quite honestly. So the Formula Ford race is definitely one to get up early to watch as well. Canada, the town is phenomenal. There's so many things to do. There's a lot of things to eat. So I know me and Grace are big fans of going there just to eat alone, so to speak. But avoid St. Catherine Street with the kids, please. But definitely go get some mussels and pommes frites in Old Montreal as well, if you can get away for a couple of hours. And but yeah, it's a very good European-esque race. You would think you were in Belgium, somewhere like that. When you're there, the ease of getting in and out of the track is easier on the train too. So it's really the best street race anywhere, I think, just for getting in and out, and just being so close to the city. And and it's a fun race, and usually a very exciting race.
Cool. Excellent. Well, enjoy, John. Have a good time, and happy anniversary.
Absolutely.
That's good. Paul and I are a little ahead of you.
You're just a little more ahead of you. No, am I ahead of you on the anniversaries? Probably am. I don't know.
I think you are.
Yeah, I'm nearly at 25.
You are. Okay. I'm at 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a lot older than me, but I got married a lot younger.
I'm older than you by months.
I like that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And don't tell my wife. I can't remember if it's 23. I think it's 23 this year. Yeah.
She doesn't listen. So
she doesn't listen to this podcast. She doesn't listen to me, period. Why would you?
So she's a
Yeah,
smart lady.
she is a smart lady. All right, well, that does it for this podcast, but be sure to share your opinion. Just go to theparkforme.com, do it with decorum and civility. As always, a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. We could not and would not do this podcast without you, so we are incredibly grateful for your support, and certainly most recently, well, we've had some departures. So anyway, really do appreciate that. If you like the podcast, go over to iTunes, give us some love, give us a good rating over there. We will be back, Paul, in a couple of weeks for Baku.
Ooh, okay, yeah. So
We got a couple
week break.
things. You got a week break.
I get to go to Detroit for the Detroit Grand Prix, so that's fun.
That's right.
So if anyone's lives in Detroit or coming out for the IndyCar race at Detroit, I will be there. Come
There
say
you go.
hi. Yeah.
Yep. Go look for the Heart of Racing Aston Martin team, and say hi to Paul in Detroit.
Yeah. The drivers always love it when someone asks them where I am. And it happens more often than you think. They give me so much crap. Like, Paul, it's another one. Roman, another one of your fans outside. Paul's like, oh, thanks, Roman. Just get back
That's
in
funny. Get in the car and drive. So that's funny. Yeah, so be sure to go see Paul if you're going to be at the Detroit Grand Prix. And then we got Baku, but we not only have that, I've got to go to a trade show. And I get back on that Friday, but that is Friday practice for Baku. But it also happens to be, Paul, the 24-hour Le Mans. Ooh.
Lovely.
Yes. So when we come back with Paul, we should have a lot of racing to talk about.
Nice.
Talk about Baku, and then we talk about the mother of all races for Paul, the sports car race to end all sports car races, which is the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So,
indeed. Love it.
All right. Well, until that, I will try to find Grace, and we'll come back next week and talk about F1 news. Thank you so much for watching us. Thank you so much for promoting the Parc Fermé, and we will see you next week. Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.